Hello, hello. My name is Frank Anthony, and welcome back to Let Me Be Frank, episode 53. One thing I just realized I never say, like, oh, if you're new, hello for the first time kind of thing. I'm always like, welcome back. I'm always assuming that people are just always continuously coming back to my show and that you guys have been around since the very first episode, which is probably not the case for a lot of people. So I don't know, maybe I'll change that. But yeah, welcome back to the people who have, been here before. And if you haven't been here before, hello, my name is Frank Anthony. And it's great to have you listening or watching or whatever that you're doing. So last week, I said that I wouldn't always do these super serious topics that were on the news or trending or whatever. Last week had to do with James Charles and Dante Wright and Rachel Hollis. This week is going to be a little bit more of it's supposed to be a fun thing, I guess, in quotations, but I don't know how much fun it'll necessarily be. There'll probably be some funny stories maybe, but there'll definitely be some certain things that I talk about that are more on the serious side when it comes to this. So I went on social media and I asked you guys to ask me any various questions about me working at Old Navy. I'll give you guys a very, very little backstory to that, which, by the way, if you're watching, I decided to wear a sweater from Old Navy themselves. I don't know how old this is. It's the Cali, for people that can't see me. It's the long sleeve sweater blue Cali one. I think they made a gray one with blue writing as well. This has to be like at least 3-4 years old. I think normally there's usually there's a tag the size of New York that they stitch into the clothes. It's so fucking huge. And I cut it out probably like I do with most of their clothes. So I don't know exactly how old it is. Fun fact too, if you cut that tag out and there's no number and you don't have the tag attached, and even sometimes if you do have the tag attached, you can't return the item. Yeah. And maybe some people have gotten away with that and they have returned it, but they're not supposed to take it. It has to have that inside tag. It's called the Joker tag. But anyway, I digress. So I worked for the company for, I want to say 6 years. 5 years too many. No, I'm kidding. But I worked for the company for 6 years. I've been, God, like so many different positions. That's what's so interesting about my experience with this company is usually when you go into a job, you are an associate, usually the entire time, or you're working at a desk the entire time, a receptionist the entire, like usually with certain types of jobs, especially jobs that aren't your true passion, you're usually not trying to work up in them, or they might just be so impossible to work up in them. But with Old Navy, I ended up doing so many different jobs that I never pictured myself doing. I honestly thought I worked at two different locations, and when I was at the first location, I didn't expect to ever be with this company long term. I just wanted some extra money, honestly, and to just get some more job experience on my resume. And I was going to school during all this too, so I just I had different plans in general. But I ended up being, I can't even remember all of the titles anymore because there was old titles and then they had changed them. And I don't know what it is today, but we're just going to say that I was the logistics manager, we'll call it, for quite a long time. And I also was the hiring manager for a short amount of time. I was also in charge of the men's department. That was another position. I'm trying to think what the hell I wasn't the company, because I was a lead. I was the normal sales associate. I was cash handler. Like there was a lot of different positions that I ended up doing. I've covered store managers before, very shortly, nothing like long term or anything. So I always make jokes online and stuff just about my careers in general, but especially Old Navy, it's a huge joke where I'm almost like Barbie that just has all these different jobs, because that's just how I was. I ended up having, I don't know, I guess I just ended up having a passion for what I did and was like, yeah, I'll try this, I'll try something new. I think regardless of what your job is, it's you should always want to try to learn new things about it. And when it came to Old Navy, I sure learned a lot of different skills and a lot of different things. And, at the end of the day, that is cool that I got to do that and stuff, and that I was able to do everything that I did. So, without further ado, I want to say that I received about 8 questions or so, or we're going to go over 8 questions that I received. And then I'm going to go over some things that I saw on Reddit that people post, whether they be questions or stories, and kind of put my thoughts or relatability to those. So, got my phone here. The first one, we're starting really positive with these questions. Did you hate being a manager? So I want to, so out of the 6 years, I was a manager for at least, I want to say at least 4 of the years, like in between 3 and 4 of those years. And you might be wondering, well, why is that hard for you to remember? It's because my position changed so many times throughout the time working there that I can't remember when I was an associate and when I was this position or when I was that position. I can kind of remember the order of operations, but my job title really changed quite a lot. The company probably was so over my job code changing by year 5 and 6. They were probably like, okay, can you just like stay in one spot at a time, please? Thank you. So, did I hate being a manager? By the way, too, I lightly skimmed all the questions and I didn't prepare any answers. So I really gotta think about these. Did I hate being a manager? On average, I would say no. And then I'll get into why. And I also will get into things that I didn't like about being a manager. So I would say that I didn't hate being a manager. One, hate is a strong word. And I feel like when I started hating my job there, or when I start hating a job in general, I believe if you're at a point in your life where you hate going to work every day, you shouldn't work at that job. And by the time I got to the point where I really didn't enjoy what I was doing anymore, that's when I was starting to think I probably need to leave this place. But that took a long time to get there. There was a lot of things that happened to me each and every year of being with the company that just kind of pushed me more and more towards like, yeah, I think I just need to go. I think my time's up. One thing I didn't hate about being a manager is I was told by less people on what to do. As a sales associate, you have a lot of different people, whether it be your store manager or the shipment manager or a hiring manager or a merchandising manager or LP or maybe even a cash handler once in a while, like, or a lead. Like you had all these different people telling you what you should be doing. And I'm that type of person where, at least when I had stepped down at times, when I became an associate again, it was hard to start receiving all that again from people I used to be managers with, or people maybe who were an associate first and then they became a manager. And it was like that power switch. It was hard for me. And I can only imagine too, when I was a manager for people who have been with the company longer than me, I can only imagine how they took that. Maybe they didn't love that. And it's kind of understandable at the end of the day. Like, yeah, I'm your boss now, but it's like when you feel like you might know more than a certain person, it kind of does make a little bit sense. Or I have to at least give some benefit of the doubt to why someone would be a little bit aggravated or maybe not want to listen to every single thing someone higher than you is telling you necessarily. So I did like being told by less people on what I had to do. It felt like people trusted my judgment more and my ideas more, my creativity and stuff. So that's something I did like about being a manager. An obvious thing about being a manager that I liked was having keys so that I could get into places like the office or places that, getting into the store early in the morning. When you're an associate, you have to wait until a manager can let you in. You either call into the store or the manager's not even at the store yet, so you're just waiting at the gate. That was a pain in the ass when you don't have keys. And when you have keys and a security code, it's like you can just come and go, which is always nice. So I liked that. One thing I actually really enjoyed too about being a manager. It's going to sound a little bit weird, but I really actually liked motivating the staff. I don't know how effective I was all the time with that, because I know people, maybe some people really did like me that I worked with, and some people probably didn't like me that much. But I really did like trying to motivate the staff to do well, to do, there were certain games I was starting to come up with that I was like, I hope this is fun. I hope this makes their workday at least a little bit more enjoyable, because there was just days that whether for them or for myself, that I know were just, they just would feel so dreadful or boring and stuff, and work shouldn't be that way. And usually Old Navy was the type of company that promoted fun. Maybe I'll get more into that. I don't remember if that was a question or not. There was something about the company that I'm going to answer later that was a question, but they would promote that, but then there would be a lot of like, you got to work all the time. Something that wasn't realized all the time within the company was that when you do some of these little fun things, and they really could be small things, it can really help the morale of the staff. And in my opinion, I felt like staff morale was something that wasn't appreciated enough when I worked for this company. I don't know how it is today, and obviously all store locations are different. One thing, if I had to say something that I didn't like about being a manager, well, there's two things I think that can come to mind instantly. One of them is I did not like when, for example, if a certain associate maybe didn't finish their job or they didn't do their job, I would get blamed. Fun fact. Of course, it's going to come back. That's why your bosses push you to do certain things, because if you don't finish the job, usually the blame goes back to the person above you, because they technically didn't lead you correctly, which isn't always the case. Sometimes it is the case that maybe they didn't lead you effectively, and that's why you didn't get the job done. But there's also cases that sometimes the worker just didn't try, unfortunately. So being an associate and being a manager, I feel like looking back now, I can see both sides of the coin, which I appreciate. I think it's something I recommend to people, that they be on both sides, because then you really do get to see the picture of, of how an associate feels and how a manager feels, and how at the end of the day, both people want the same thing, but it's just being miscommunicated at the end of the day. Misconception of employees or associates is that they aren't trying, or that they're lazy, or they don't really care, they're not working hard enough. That is a really big misconception. In reality, they're just not being treated right. That's something I forgot along the way when I was a manager. Something to understand about managers, they are severely overworked. I can only imagine during this pandemic, I haven't had to work there during the pandemic. I can only imagine the frustration that I guess all the workers too have had to endure working at Old Navy during this time. Whether it's people calling out, even not getting hours to work and stuff, I can only imagine the frustration and just the bullshit that everyone has had to go through. And I think that's something I really want to get across in this episode, is that it shouldn't be associates versus managers. They need to work together. And if there really is a problem, it's higher up, I promise you. I guess another thing that I didn't like about being a manager, I forgot my other thought. I had another thought before, but I guess another one that I didn't like is at least in the positions that I was in, I kind of was looked at as the bad guy in certain cases. Like I said, I was logistics manager and a hiring manager, and the men's department manager, I didn't really receive as much flack from associates, because it's like I barely was working with other associates in that position, whereas the other two, I kind of led certain teams or certain people. And with logistics, I'd get blamed for like delay times, or for being too pushy about getting the product and stuff out. And with hiring, I know it probably, a lot of it wasn't being said to my face, but I know I was getting blamed for people not getting hours and stuff. And at the end of the day, there was only so much I could do in those things. And that's kind of why I wanted to do this episode too, because I literally will answer anything about my experience with this company to give clarity of what I had to go through. Going through the questions, no one really asked anything super personal, which I'm surprised, but that's okay. I just don't have to touch on it, except for saying that I really went through some dark shit when I worked here. Some, like stuff that required HR. That's where I'm going to leave that. But there was just stuff, there was that stuff going on. And then on top of it, then you're seen as the bad guy because you're not doing this or that for certain associates. And there was really only so much I could do. When it came to logistics, I love that team. Well, I worked on both teams, but at the first store, I wasn't a manager for logistics, but I was for the second store. And I love that team. Like I said, both teams, but I loved managing the logistics team. I'm sure most of the team is still there. I think maybe, I hope, because they were good. I really enjoyed working with them. They wanted to be there. They worked hard, and they worked as hard as they could, considering, the various technical difficulties that would happen or this or that. They worked hard, and a lot of people did work hard at that store. And there really wasn't too many people I ever disliked, especially when it came to associates. Maybe that was a misconception too. For me, I think, if I felt like someone wasn't giving their best or wasn't really trying, then I probably wasn't loving their performance, or I wasn't like loving them in that moment. But I never hated anyone like on a super personal level in that sense. Like, at the end of the day, this is just a clothing store. I know they'd burn me at the stake for saying that, but it's like, it felt like, working at Old Navy sometimes, at least as a manager, it felt like being a doctor, which is insane because it's nowhere near as important of a job, but yet you were expected to always be working. That was my point. I remember my point now. The other thing I didn't like about being a manager is I could be dying and it did not matter. I had to come in if there was no coverage, because at least as an associate, you had a bigger pool of someone who could cover your shift or someone that could cover the hours, and associate shifts were shorter. So you would only need someone for a few hours, where trying to cover a manager, it's like maybe one or two other ones aren't working that day that could maybe cover you, but then they'd have to cover 8-9 hours, and they probably don't want to come in because they already worked a bunch of other days. So that sucked. Like, I know when I was an associate, when I had to call out, I didn't really stress honestly that much. There was always someone that could either pick it up, or if no one really picked it up personally, someone was going to cover it usually. Which during a pandemic, though, probably much different. It's probably a lot harder. But with managers, it just, yeah, I mean, when I had to get managers to cover my shift, it was, like, you pretty much had to help them in a certain way, which, once again, I can kind of understand that, because I know when certain managers wanted me to cover for them, it's like, I don't want to come in. I might, there were certain days I was at the beach. It's like, I am not leaving the beach to come cover you. I'm sorry. And I might get some flack from certain people, because my episodes do post to LinkedIn, but it's okay to say no. And I know I'm going to get a lot of shit for that, and that's something that I would never say while I was working there. Or something that I never acknowledged, because I didn't want to tell employees like, yeah, it's okay that you said no. They'd be like, what? But if your boss asks you to come in, it's okay to say no. If you really can't, if you're already working on your schoolwork or something really important in life, or just being there for a friend or a family member in a serious time, or to build quality time, it's okay to say no. If you don't need that shift, it's okay to say no. I want to get that across. Don't let them guilt trip you into coming in. Did that so much during my career, and I'll never do that again for a job. Like, I'll never feel bad or guilty just because I couldn't work a 3-4 hour shift or something, or just, and I'm not saying don't ever help people out. Like, that's not what I'm trying to say, but don't practically kill yourself for these types of jobs at the end of the day. Because I mean, there was a day I decided to cover for people. And actually, this happened a couple times where I worked 6 a.m. to 10 at night. And you just shouldn't do. I mean, it's retail. I'm not a surgeon. I'm not a police officer. I'm not no offense, I'm not important in this position. Like, I should not be working all those hours. I mean, that I can't even, that's like 14, 16 hours or something. My math's not 100% there right now, but that's way too fucking much. I working over 8, 9 hours. No, just no. If you're in retail, no. 12-hour shifts in retail, no. Fuck you. Not, no. Did you love working at Old Navy as much as I did? Well, we went from negative to positive on there. So I kind of explained a little bit about what I liked and not and didn't like about being a manager. So I kind of said certain things that I liked and didn't like. Overall, so like I said too, very quickly, my experience at Old Navy is, shall I say, unique. Without getting into too much detail, just a lot of things happened to me or that I was a part of in the company. It's a lot. It's gonna be in the book in the future, some of it. But I really, it might sound surprising because I said too, this episode is not meant to shit on Old Navy or anything or the stores that I worked at. So there, I really did enjoy working there at times. Like I wouldn't have stayed as long as I did if I didn't. One of my friends helped me get the job at Old Navy, and when it came to the logistics work, especially when it was signage and shipment and markdowns, love that stuff. I love doing that task stuff. It was fast paced. No offense to customers, but you didn't have to talk to customers as much because you were either in the back or you were just like, doing that logistics work. I still would here and there, but obviously when you're customer service or you're at the register, especially, of course, like you're always talking to customers. But with this, it was just so fast paced. Like my shifts would go by so fast compared to like if you were in the fitting room, it's going to go so slow if there's no go backs and it's not busy at the store. Like that sucks. I mean, I would like really clean in that fitting room just because I'd be so fucking bored at times. So, there were certain things like that I really did love. Another thing that I loved about working there was I also became in charge of the volunteer work for a while. And there were certain things like we did a walk and, we helped out Dress for Success. Like there were certain things like that. Those certain projects we worked with Unify Against Bullying. That I really enjoyed. I think too, when I was doing that work, I remember thinking to myself, like, yeah, I wish I could get paid for this type of work, or like, this is the work I'd rather do. Oh yeah, we picked up trash at one point. So yeah, like that type of work, I think why I enjoyed it more or why I was realizing that was because that volunteer work we did really, like, yes, the work that we did at Old Navy, it made the company money. It did make a difference, but I felt like the volunteer work, you're really making a difference in people's lives. Like you're actually enriching people's lives and you're doing something good, whether it's for other people or the planet or whatever. So there just it felt more rewarding, that type of work. So I liked that was part of my Old Navy experience. Of course, there was times that I was like, God, like I'm so fucking over this place. There was definitely days. And a lot of the times I would hide that. I'd have to. I mean, especially as a manager, because you didn't want trust me, there was days that it was harder for me to hide that. Maybe it slipped a little bit. And that's something that I, needed to work on for myself. But as a manager, like it's kind of like being a role model for a younger sibling. You wanted to be a good role model. But at the same time, I couldn't be like fake positive all the time when I knew that like the ship was sinking. That's the best way I can put it. Where like things were just really starting to go downhill at a certain year and certain point during my career there. And I just couldn't pretend like everything was okay anymore because it wasn't. Some really shitty things were happening. and I couldn't just like pretend like it wasn't, I felt too guilty about, I would have felt guilty if I had been that way. And unfortunately, the more quote real that I was getting about the situation, the more I think I was turning off higher up managers and bosses and stuff. I think they were really loving me at one point, and then it was like, oh, like he's not as much for the company as we thought he was, or I was originally. But then I was like, no, I'm not gonna be, I'm not gonna be taken advantage of anymore. I should quote. But yeah, I think overall I would say yes. I one thing that really helps with loving that work was the people that I worked with. The majority of the most of the people. Didn't love everyone, but if it wasn't for the people, I mean, there's a couple people there that are some of my best friends still, and there's a lot of people that I think are like I still consider friends or good people. So if it wasn't for the people that I worked with in both stores, I would not have stayed with the company nearly as long, because there's been other companies I've worked for, whether they're retail or not, where the people were just so awful, all of them or most of them, that it's like I wasn't going to waste my time interacting with, because when you go to a job, most likely these types of jobs, you're working 8 hours or you're spending a lot of time at these places. So I'm not going to go into a workplace just hating, and feeling like I have to hate people. Hate is so draining. And I think towards the very end of my career, I was really just I was starting to feel that for not even, I don't even want to say for the people necessarily, but like for the company itself. And I had this I want to get across to just very quickly. There's certain people that I think believed I left because of them. And I just want to say that's not true. That I honestly, what happened was, it was a typical busy day, like always. I mean, I was always staying busy at my job. And this is when I was the hiring man. I was the hiring manager at the end. And honestly, I didn't love that job as much as logistics. Like logistics was my strong suit pretty much. Like that was like the job for me. Like that was meant for me, meant for my speed, for my energy. It was an amazing workout. When it came to the hiring stuff, I was like, oh, I'll go into this position. One, it's better money, but I also thought like, yeah, I'm becoming a people person and I do like connecting with others. Like this could be a good job. And just there was other things to that job that I'm like, yeah, no, it was like there was a lot more office work and sitting around and stuff. Like I still was working, but like, it wasn't for me 100%. But I had this realization before I left, of just it hit me like a light bulb. I was getting so pissed off by just what was going on in that day. I can't remember exactly what was going on, but I remember just being so pissed off. And then I had this light bulb moment that was like, Frank, you're working somewhere where you're not going to stay the rest of your life. And you're going to school for something else, and there's other things that you want to do in life. Why are you still like, I realized one of the only reasons I still was there at this point, because I'd lost so many friends, whether they quit or were fired or whatever. There was so many people leaving at this point that one of the only reasons really that I had left was to make money. And I was like, you can make money anywhere. And when that light bulb went off, all of a sudden I'm typing a resignation email and I'm like, oh shit. Like, and I remember when I sent that, and by the way, to the person I sent that to, I'm so sorry that it just happened like that. Because I know that didn't make that person feel good, probably. But and I remember too, I was like, holy shit, I just fucking sent that. Like, I can't believe I just sent that. What am I doing? Like, I didn't plan for this. I didn't have backup. Like, what the fuck am I doing? So word of advice, like set up a backup before you do something like that, before you put it 2 weeks in. But yeah, I realized that I was like, and ever since I've left there, I feel like I found myself again, like I was happy there at times, but like the work that I do now and everything and just the life that I live now, I'm like, I'm actually myself again and actually happy and not just like faking it for, like the work that I do now really feels like something that I'm passionate about. And just, I don't know, like it's just so like, it's not even like many tweaks that I did in my life, but like those little tweaks really went a long way. And another reason too with leaving was that I knew I'd become less passionate, about the company as a whole. And I was realizing, I'm not performing as well as I did. Or I knew like that I could do better. Like I was starting to I still was working hard, but the passion wasn't there. And when you don't have the passion anymore, it's like I was afraid things were going to start being half-assed, and I'm not a half-asser. So I was like, yeah, I think it's my time. But overall, because of the people and certain tasks and aspects of the job, I did love what I was doing, and I loved the people that I was working with. But obviously, I left for because obviously, people leave jobs because they're not happy anymore, or because of certain bosses or people or environment, whatever. But overall, I could say that yeah, I guess I did love my job, and then I kind of lost that love over time. All right, so the next question: Old Navy prides itself on putting customers and employees first. Do you think the company, not managers, is successful in doing so? That is a great question. And that's one I really have to think about. Not so much about think about how I have to answer that in like some professional way, but like I really have to think about what I believe in with that. Cause that is, they do pride themselves in putting customers and employees first. Like, let me be frank here. Number one, obviously, is making money with that company. And, this isn't the company that this isn't the only company that does this. Like, there's so many companies just like this. I'm not like trying to bully this company. It's just I have personal experience with this company to share, but a lot of them do the same things. No, no. That's the short answer. No, I don't think I think they could do a better job with that. I mean, the pay for employees was not the worst. I don't think it was bad considering other places. Like if you had to compare it to others, I don't think like that was so necessarily bad. Payroll was terrible. Like I said, that's a lot of companies too, but I could talk a lot about payroll because I have so much experience with that behind the scenes that unfortunately, I actually saw with the way that I'm answering these questions, I might not get to the Reddit parts this time. Maybe that could be a future episode. But one thing I did see on Reddit was someone said that Old Navy they don't want to hire people and they don't want to give you hours. And the second one's kind of true. The first one is not true. I can answer that with like trust me, they want to hire people. They want to hire as many people as they can so that they can give everyone the least amount of hours as possible because then no one's hitting overtime. I hope I don't get sued. But it's fat. I mean, you got to think about that. Like, why do you think you only got 3 4 hour shifts? Well, if you got a 3 hour shift, they don't want to give you a break because they don't have to give you a break unless it surpasses that in Massachusetts, at least. So, and for this company's policy. So, I mean, 4 hour shift, you got a 15-minute break. And then I think past 5 was a half hour and a 15 and so on. But yeah, no, I don't think and all stores are different. Maybe some stores do a better job at organizing all this stuff, but when it comes to employees, I don't think they put employees first. There were certain little benefits that I'm like, okay, that's pretty good and stuff, but I think they could have done more to help employees out. For example, stuff related to health insurance, they don't really even talk about. That was actually something I never really got to talk about with employees. I don't even think associates knew that Old Navy had their own health insurance at times, or because we were never able to really have time to explain that to people. And the health insurance, it wasn't like amazing, but it's also not that expensive compared to getting it from the state. So that's something, I guess technically actually that's a good benefit of them. The problem is the good things about them, whether it's sick time or paid time off or the health insurance, they purposely don't give you time to explain that stuff, or it's stuff that's not advertised, because it's stuff that actually benefits the employee. So that's why I would say employees are not put first, because they don't want to tell you certain things up front. You kind of have to like either learn from other associates, or maybe it slips, or you kind of read all your paperwork whenever you get policy stuff. Like, just try to read it all, make the time, because then you kind of know like the laws of the store, and the rules, and that if someone tries to kind of like throw a curveball at you, knowledge is power at the end of the day. That's what helped me win some battles. But now, Old Navy putting customers first, they this is gonna sound a little confrontational, but Old Navy puts customers first in the sense that they let customers steal our shit. uh, it's no secret that loss prevention, other known as LP, for Old Navy, could really use some improvement, unfortunately. And maybe this isn't every store, but I know it's a lot of them, that loss prevention really needs improvement. I think they pretend to, if I'm going to be honest, because, we'll talk up things like the Old Navy card and stuff and getting you to sign up. And, we're giving you a discount, but at the end of the day, we're also giving you a bill. And we want you to keep using our coupons and that credit card and stuff. I have the Old Navy credit card myself. And, when it comes to signing up for that, unfortunately, this Old Navy card was my first credit card. So it's like I technically could close it, but I really shouldn't, because it's at least 7 years old and you want a long age limit on your credit. It would really fuck up my average age length. And I have built such a high limit for it. So I'm like, I can't even close this card. And trust me, like, it does give some good discounts. You get your rewards, but it's not always explained. And what a customer has to ask when it comes to that card is you have to ask about the interest rate. And you have to remember that store credit cards have extremely high interest rates. Old Navy's, I don't know if it's updated. I think it's still the same. What I've seen on my invoices, 27%. Doesn't sound like a big percentage. Trust me, it is. Because think about it. School loans, if you have any, those, at least mine, are only like 3-4%, which, like, thank God they're not double digits. Maybe some people's are. I'm sorry if they are for you. So you just got to think about that. 3-4% for a school loan, it ends up being a lot of money. And so if you really rack up your Old Navy card, and let's say your starting balance is like $1,000, and you just like max that out and you don't pay it off, that 27% is going to really just whoop your ass every month. And then that's why people end up, really suffering in their credit score and everything. So, anyway, I went off tangent a little bit. Yeah, no, I don't think they do. I mean, no. They're, if you stay in touch with the Old Navy news and stuff, this was actually around the time I left. There was some really bad racial stuff where black customers were being discriminated against. And I remember when I saw that stuff, we were, fun fact too, with working at the company, we were never really allowed to give our comments or statements on those types of things while we worked there, or like to reporters or anything. But now I can. And yeah, it was fucked. It was really fucked. And that company really does pride itself on not being they pride themselves on not discriminating against others, and they do pride themselves on like loving people and equality. And yeah, it's definitely, it's definitely some bullshit behind the scenes, when you really do see who is behind, who's saying those messages, the person behind those messages, you just know it is bullshit. Unfortunately, that's my opinion though. It's my opinion, but then I've also seen it. I've seen the wrongdoing. So yeah, I mean, with all that, I would say that they don't. If I had to say a yes or no, I would say that unfortunately they don't. But I definitely think, I mean, I think I have seen a few stores though that do a really good job at treating their employees and their customers well. I know whenever a customer, I worked in some rough areas, not gonna lie, and I still did treat most of the customers really well, or I tried to, because I think, especially the second store that I worked at, not definitely not I mean, I grew up in that area when I was a kid. So I was used to the types of people that you could get as customers. And at the end of the day, you might think like, oh, this person is ghetto, or they're like really poor, or, like uneducated. You might have those ideas, but treat people exactly the way that you want to be treated. And whenever I did that, and whenever I kept it real with these customers, I swear they respected me so fucking much. And same thing with certain employees too. And I really just kept it honest. They respected that. And you just have to treat people the way you want to be treated, and don't treat them like they're stupid, because they're not. Most of them aren't, that walk in there. So that walk into any of your establishments. So yeah, you can't treat the consumer like shit. I know that the consumer sometimes can come off really volatile or angry. And then, that's when it gets a little bit gray and a little bit more complicated. But trust me, there's some really nice customers that come into. Yeah, I mean, I think they should appreciate the customer base and the employees more, the company as a whole. Do I think they ever will? I think it's possible that they can, or at least do a better job at it. I want to say they're trying. I don't know. So so this next one, it's sorry. I'm laughing because it's not a question, it's like a statement. But I'm gonna, I guess, say my comments on it. So all this says is they are slave drivers. So there's a joke that I used to say when it came to this whole, this comment reminded me of a joke that, well, not even so much a joke, just what I would call the store whenever I felt really frustrated with the store, or there was like all these demands that maybe higher ups had for us to do. I would nickname Old Navy, I would nickname Old Slavery whenever I would get mad at them. So it's kind of ironic that I got a comment like this. Yeah, how do my comments on that? I mean, they're not wrong. I mean, whoever said that, I would not say they're wrong necessarily. And I could imagine that maybe they're saying that. I don't know if they're still working there now or not. If they are still working there, I bet they're really pushing people to try to do everything. Like I said, I can only imagine with that. But yeah, even before the pandemic, when I was a manager and when I was an associate, but especially when I was an associate, it's like you would get work done and then your reward was more work. And something on Reddit too, I just want to recognize that I saw a lot of people say is that a lot of people were quitting because they felt like they were only one person doing the work of 2, 3 people. And and a lot of people were saying that. There was at least 9, 10 comments instantly that I saw said that was the reason they left. And I was like, that's interesting. And I'm wondering if that's how this person feels or felt. I definitely felt that way a little bit. I If I ever came off that way as a manager, I do apologize for being that way. I can't remember if I was a lot or at all, but I can, I think about like logistics and shipment and stuff, and I probably was a little bit, when it came to pushing and stuff, trying to get things done on time. Yeah, I mean, you are pushed to work hard, and I think unfortunately the people that do really try and really put the effort in, there's not enough appreciation. I'm not going to say who told me this, but there was someone I used to work with that, when I said, oh, employees, I was trying to like just raise, I think it was at a manager's meeting, and I had said something like, yeah, the associates don't feel like they're being appreciated enough. And honestly, that's actually like an interesting concern. And like I said, that goes back to morale of the staff, which is really important, something to really take into consider. Because if you don't have employees, you don't have a business. And this person told me that associates don't get paid to be appreciated, or like or payment is their appreciation. And it's like, what the fuck? Like, no, like we need to, like associates, managers, whoever, like we're human beings, and we can't forget that. We're not superhuman. We're not these robots that can just like do so many fucking things in a short amount of time. I mean, even to this day, I still feel like I'm rushing around trying to do as much as I can when it comes to like getting things done. And it's like, as a human being, there's only so much you can do, especially in certain situations and circumstances. So, I do hate to see this comment because it sucks. Because it's something that you could pass along to someone higher up, or it's something that I could suggest and say, let people at HR know, or, report this or whatever. And I just know they wouldn't do anything, or I don't think they would really try or care. Which I guess kind of goes back to that previous one about like, does Old Navy put their customers and employees up? And I guess that really just solidified that, yeah, no. Unfortunately, I think it's kind of like, well, they get a paycheck, that's enough. But it's not always enough. And at the end of the day, it's really not a lot of money for $1 billion company. All right. So the next question: what was the best experience you gained from working at Old Navy? What I instantly thought of, it's going to sound a little weird, so I'm going to explain it. Because, when you think about experiences working at a place, you might think like the one that I'm going to say, it just sounds weird considering, but one of the best experiences I gained from working at Old Navy was how to treat people better. So when I became a manager, multiple times when I became a manager, there was a point during my manager career where I think I was putting the business over human life. Towards the end of my career here, and when I finally left, that was one of the best lessons that I learned, was to treat people like they have value, that they really do. People who work at these stores are and especially during the pandemic, are so valuable. Do not underappreciate these people. Don't take these people for granted. They're busting their ass for, no offense, but for not the most money at times. I mean, yeah, like not unemployment, minimum wage, yeah, it's going up, but it's with the amount that they do and the amount that some managers do and stuff too. Like they need to make more money. At the end of the day, it's a lot of shit that they got to deal with. And I definitely learned how important human life really is and how much we should appreciate it. And when I was learning that, I was actually treating customers way better than I ever did before. I was really actually listening instead of selling to them, which is what one of my past mindful moments is about, is not treating everyone like a transaction, which I know in the retail world, that's what you're kind of supposed to do to make money. But when you don't always do that, sometimes you end up making even more money because you're actually having genuine conversations. You're making time for that. And when I actually was making time to listen to what associates were saying and their concerns, I was like, wow, there's a lot of fucking problems here, and we need to do something about it. We need to change these things. And then I think one of the most disappointing things is when you go to higher ups and you try to make that change, and you're like, I'm gonna, like you're passionate about, like, I want to really make this place better. And then that horrible realization that they just don't give a fuck. They just don't care. They care about making money and having it at the cheapest labor possible. When there's no heart in a company, that's what's most frustrating. And that's what I learned from this place was to treat people better and to treat people as equals, which I always knew, but it taught me never to look down on anyone who might be in a lower position than you. Never. You know, I became friends with almost everyone that I worked with, or for most people that I worked with, regardless of their position. It didn't matter if you were the store manager, or if you were cleaning the store, or if you were a seasonal employee. I treated you or wanted to treat you as a human being, because that's what we deserve as individuals. We deserve respect, and unfortunately that's not given in these types of corporations at time. It's not given enough. So that was probably one of the best experiences that I gained. Besides that, I did learn even better how to communicate with others. I learned, I obviously learned some leadership skills, what to do and what not to do, because I definitely made mistakes along the way. I mean, you got to think about it. I was like younger in my 20s, and having someone like that in a management or a store manager or whatever in a higher position, it's like, one, my brain was still developing, because your brain still develops until the age 25. So it's like that was still going on. I was still growing. And at the end of the day, we're all like still slowly growing. And I was still learning things. And I had to remind myself that I don't know everything, and that always I can't always be in control of everything. So those were definitely some things that I learned from working with the company that really helped me with my future in life and just going forward now. Okay, who's your favorite employee to work with, or used to? Because yeah, I don't work there anymore. So I'm gonna actually do both stores, because I worked at two different stores. For mostly worked at two different stores. I mean, I volunteered at other stores too, but there was two stores that I worked the longest at. The first one was like a year and a half, and then pretty much what would that make it, 4.5 at the second one, pretty much. So okay, so yeah, the first store, oh god, I know this is gonna actually get a little sad, just because of everything that's happened. I don't want to get too much into specifics, but there was an employee named Liz at my first store, and I would say she was one of the most favorite people I ever worked with, and probably one of the reasons I didn't quit at my first store, which meant I would have never met anyone at that second store, which is where a lot of my current friendships and relationships are today. So I wouldn't even have any of that if I didn't stay through this first store. It's just sad because Liz is no longer with us. Like I said, I'm not going to get into specifics. That's not my story to tell. I don't want to get teary. Liz was so amazing of a person. Liz was awesome. I don't think I ever met anyone that didn't like Liz she was a great worker and leader. I think I took some of her compassion for my leadership going forward. Obviously this was the first store I worked at in the company, and obviously there was a lot I had to learn, a lot of basic stuff, and she never got mad at me once. She was super patient in that way. She was so compassionate. She really cared about employees, and someone that I even to this day look up to. And it's so unfortunate that she's not here anymore. But that was definitely someone that was one of my favorite people. Other people that I would say, three other people that I would say at the first store that were my favorite to work with. Gotta go with the shipment team. And I gotta say that Sue, Jose, and Lisa were great to work with at that store. Like they got me through it was so, oh my God, like it was just a lot of fun. We would talk about movies and stuff and just like a lot of laughs during that time. And I mean, the whole team was great, but those three I really bonded with, I think, the most during my time there on the shipment team. Also at the first store too, I almost forgot. Obviously, I said earlier that one of my friends got me into the company. I didn't work with Kimmy much, unfortunately, and my friends Monica and Chrissy also worked there for a short time. I didn't really work with them a lot because they knew they were my friends. So obviously they tried to keep us apart and stuff, so we could be productive. There was, I'll never forget, I think Monica, Kimmy, and the three of us were together on Black Friday for pretty much the same timed shifts. That was really fucking stupid for the company or whoever scheduled that. I mean, I really appreciate whoever did that, but obviously, like nothing was really done in that time. We were like, oh my God, we had like, I think we did a fashion show at some point or something because I was placed in the fitting room, and it's like, long story short, they put this at my first store, you could enter the fitting room two different ways, but in the front part of it, they like blockaded it off to kind of help control the line. But the problem with that was people just thought the fitting room was closed. So no one was coming in. So, when one of my friends was backup for register and another was recovering in kids or something. So they would just sneak in to the fitting room and we would be just like trying shit on. Just like, yeah, I mean, I did work hard and stuff, but like, I'm gonna have some fun times too, like that. Like Black Friday is just so stressful, and I remember ever since that shift on, I really just tried not to stress during Black Friday. If anything, flip-flop day became way more stressful in that type of company, and anyone that's worked for Old Navy knows that day sucks when it comes to, unless you're doing a task like I was for Black Friday where it's not so crazy. But the second store, it's really hard there was so many amazing people that I worked with at that store. Oh damn. Well, I mean, I have to recognize well, obviously, two of my best friends to this day and they're producers of the show, um, are Rebecca and Alexa. So, I mean, obviously, I loved working with them. And like I said, if I never worked at the store, I may never have met them and had the friendships I do with them today. I really have to recognize Becca, because, Becca was an associate too. She was a man, like her and I were managers at the same time, most of the time. And we were associates together for a little bit too. And so, if I didn't work with Becca, I definitely would have left a lot sooner. She really, because, when it came to associates, the shipment team, for the most part, and certain other employees, they really kept me sane. But then when they would go home, it was like, oh my God, who do I have now? Because I'm going to go fucking nuts. Becca was really there for me. Like whenever her and I worked together, it just was like, oh, thank God. And it was so weird too, because whenever her and I were the leaders together, or if it was just the two of us, things just went really well. Like everyone was still working and getting Old Navy cards, and yet there was no stress. I wonder why. Like it was just, I was like, oh, that is possible. Like it's possible not to be pissed off at work or stressed. Like that's so weird. And her and I were really we had a really good dynamic with that. So yeah, she kept me sane. There's so many people that I could recognize. There was another friend of mine, Karina, I have to recognize because she also was a manager too for some time. She really, her and I really made each other laugh. We were very similar, I think, personality wise. So working with her was just awesome too, in general. Like we just had such funny ass times and stuff, and like stupid ass memory good stupid ass memories and stuff. Like there was a time where I think this is when she was in charge of men's, and we just dressed her in like there was like all this clearance pieces for men's like boxers, holiday boxers, and gloves and hats, and we just fucking dressed her up and everything. And I think I still have the picture. Like she's just 5, 6 layers of these clothes and stuff. Was it productive for the business? No, but I think the business was still. I don't think it was open yet when we did. I don't know. I'm gonna lie and say that, but she kept me sane too. Like I said, everyone on the shipment team kept me sane. They also saw me go through some of my dark times. For example, I went through a breakup at work, and like they knew something was wrong, that day, and I felt like I could really talk to them. They were there for me. I tried to be there for them. I remember that day when that happened. One of them was in the break room, and I just like I said, I'm usually really good at hiding my emotions at work, but when that happened, I just broke down. I couldn't take it anymore. Like life was really stressful already, and then this guy just fucking dips. So I just was like so distraught at that point, and just like I had to let it out. I had to cry. I had to cry it out pretty much, and they were there for me. So I mean, yeah, there was so many, like I said, there's so many names I could just like go off. I don't want to like make certain people feel more important than others. If anything, it'd be easier to name the people I didn't like working with, because that would be like maybe 3 at most. Because I really did enjoy working. Even people that might have felt like, oh, like he didn't like me, I probably actually didn't mind you, or I probably did like you. Sometimes I know I was tough on people, or maybe pushing people to do things, but I guess that was like my attempt at trying to just do my job. Or if I was pushing you, I saw potential in you. Because there were certain people that worked at Old Navy that I like, maybe other managers or people thought they were lazy, but I just knew, like, I knew they were talented. They just weren't. I don't want to say that they weren't trying, but like I could just tell they didn't care anymore. And I didn't really understand why at the time, but now looking back and kind of seeing the end of my road at Old Navy, I understand why they stopped caring, and why it got frustrating. So yeah, there was a lot of favorites, and for everyone that is still working there, or if you're not working there, hello. And some of you probably asked these questions too, so thank you for that. I hope all of you are doing well, and I hope you're staying sane. All right, so we have 2 more questions. I don't think we're gonna have time for Reddit this time. I think the episode might be a little bit long already, so I'm gonna just go over these 2 questions. So this one is, where was your go-to hiding spot? That is an interesting question, and I definitely have an answer for that. So I don't want to admit this, because I am really a hard worker, I promise. But of course, there was certain, sometimes maybe I'd get a text that I really wanted to answer, or I got an important phone call that I had to answer, or something. Like, of course, I'm going to go and try to hide for a second to take it, or whatever, or like just needed a fucking mental break. There was definitely a couple moments like that. So I am going, now when I say these spots, I'm not trying to give people ideas or permission to go into these hiding spots at work. You better not. But I know I can't really stop you if you do. So I mean, fuck it. I had quite a few. I'll save my favorite one last, but I pretty much would hide anywhere. Being a manager, you knew where pretty much all the cameras were. So pretty much, yeah, hide somewhere where there's not a camera. So the bathrooms, the fitting rooms, break room. There's a part in, I would say, so at the last store that I worked at, there was a shipment area that we made that used to be women's active. That spot I would, but I don't recommend it, because there is a camera that covers pretty much that whole area, so people would see you. I remember I got caught there once, so I was like, that's not really the best. I don't know if that's still a shipment area or not, but yeah, I wouldn't hide there. In the other back area, there's like one little, I'm trying to like visualize it. There's one little section in a corner that there's not a camera. And like once in a blue moon, I'd hide there. My favorite spot was the marketing room. I don't know if it's still the marketing room. It used to be for people who may have left before, the marketing room or the break room had turned into the marketing room. Like they switched them. So some people might have left before that change happened. So the old break room slash the marketing room was one of my favorite spots because, well, I guess, the break room had a code too to punch in, but with the difference was a lot of people I think hid in the break room at times, but the marketing room, no one really thought to think of there. And with me going into the marketing room, not a lot of people really questioned it because I was the logistics manager. So it's like, I usually, and half the time I really did have to go in there for a sign or a sign holder or some markdown sign or whatever, or like signage and stuff. So like I usually really did have to get something from that room. But of course, as I'm grabbing something, I might answer a text or two or check an email or something. Or I mean, trust me, half the time I was checking, there was a group chat for managers. God, I hope that's not a thing still. It probably is. That was a fucking nightmare. But yeah, that room was my favorite. I shouldn't admit this either, but fuck it. There was a couple times I was closing where I was just like, well, one of these times I really actually felt like sick. I was like, oh God, like I feel really off. And it was super dead at the store. And the store was just, it was so trashed to the point that it was like no matter how much I recovered, it was going to look like shit. So I hid in I hid in the marketing room for a little bit to like just feel better. I was like, I gotta sit down. Because I knew if I sat in the office, there's a camera there. But in the in the marketing room, it felt safe there, like because even with the office, other managers could have came in there where the marketing room, people didn't really go in there. So yeah, I hope everyone doesn't start going in there all of a sudden. I guess you guys can blame me if if that's what happened. Sorry. I'm telling the truth. I'm being frank. So this last question is from my new friend Jennifer. She asks, what is the weirdest or most interesting customer interaction you experienced? Good question. I could probably go over a couple weird ones first. The interesting customer one I got to kind of think of along the way. I think I might have one, but the weirdest, okay, so with retail can get weird. This first story was at the first store and this other story is at the second store. So at the first store, literally I think I was working there for like a week, and it was like the first time I was in the fitting room. And something to also say too, between the two stores, the first store was high volume and the second was low volume. So pretty much what that means was the first store got a lot of traction. There's a lot of highways near this place and stuff. So you would get people like with the second store, you got a lot of locals and you'd get some other people in neighboring towns. But with the first store, you would get, like I said, I'm in Massachusetts, you would get people not just from Mass and Connecticut, but from Vermont, New York, New Hampshire, and stuff like there. I think like Delaware, someone came from. Like people were just really coming all the way out here for a little asshole Navy. I don't know why, but yeah, when I first started working there in the fitting room, I go to someone told me like I had to check the fitting rooms. Usually there's one or two family ones and then all the single ones. So I go to unlock the last family one and just it was so weird. I was like, what? Because I just I didn't know what to expect with retail. And there was two weird things. And this I don't know which one was weirder. There was a woman's bra, used bra. And I just didn't understand at the time why people just left their clothes like that, like random pieces of lingerie and underclothes. And then there was an entire box of cornflakes and like all the cereal. I swear it had to have been close to a full box because all the cereal was on the floor, which is like just a fucking worker's nightmare. Because of course I had to clean it or have someone help me clean it because I was new. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but yeah, fucking cornflakes. So yeah, the box is like in the corner, and then like all fucking cornflakes are just on the ground. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, why? That, like, it's rude. If people do that shit, or if you do that shit, I'm calling you out. Stop doing that shit. It's so fucking gross. Speaking of gross, so the second store, some really gross shit I would happen or occur. There was two instances that involved feces. But I'll go with the weirder one. And that was I think this is when I was men's manager at the time. It must have been because I was moving tables around in men's. So I'm thinking like I was probably trying to merchandise while I closed. And I moved one of the front tables and there's just a piece of shit on the ground. And I'm like, what the fuck? Or no, hold on. I have to, or no, that did happen first. So, um, because I just remembered another part of all that just made it awful. So, but it was fucking hilarious looking back, not at the time, but so there's this shit and and I realized it wasn't an animal one, it wasn't a dog one. Very rarely dogs came in, but it was not a dog poop. It was a human poop. And it like wasn't even like a baby poop either. Like it was pretty big and gross, obviously. And so I'm like, great, I have to clean that up. And usually with Old Navy, that type of stuff, employees aren't even supposed to pick up themselves. Usually you're supposed to call in like those special people to clean it. But I just feel like we really didn't have resources like that at the second store, the budget. So I'm like, I guess like we technically weren't supposed to touch waste in a way, but I'm like, I gotta clean it, or somewhat. I gotta do something. I can't just leave it there. And then what was worse was I noticed, or let me go in order because I noticed it after. So like a dumbass, so I go to clean this. And of course, like everyone I was working with, I was the only manager at the time. Everyone else was like, I'm not touching it, of course, and stuff. And my dumbass, I don't even know how it happened because I was aware of it, but I ended up, long story short, I slipped on it, which was awful. So now it's like on my shoe. So I have to clean it from my shoe. And that's when I noticed that there was like shit stain. So there was this beam in the men's department. People who work there, they're going to know exactly the area I'm talking about because there was usually a table there and then there's a beam. The shit was like imprinted on the beam. I was like, how did someone like fucking shit on this pole? And like, how did no employee notice? Like, how did none of us notice this person doing this or what? Like, was it super busy or something? This person like pick up their piece of shit and throw it on the pole. Like, I don't know what happened. So that's definitely the weirdest stuff. Interesting customer interaction. There's been a lot. And, if you work retail, that it's always interesting, interesting interactions half the time. I guess the one that I can think of, it doesn't put me in the best light, but it sure was interesting. It was around the holidays and this older woman, that's already a red flag because I swear like that was usually my older women at that store was usually like my least favorite type of customer because not all of them, but a lot of them would always come in angry with a return. And it would be this return that was like expired last year and they'd get pissed and they never receipts and whatever. So it was one of those situations. Mind you, it's so fucking busy. And I think once again, I was like the only manager at this time. I think I was the closing manager. This is why I hate working at night. I was more of a morning person, which was logistics. Anyway, so yeah, I was on register and I wasn't supposed to be, but I still was because it was that fucking busy with lack of workers. So this woman is just being so rude. I can't remember everything she was saying, but she just was talking mad shit about the company and that we all like none of us care and we suck pretty much. And this was like maybe a week or two before Christmas and Christmas Eve. And I just like had it with people. Like I was just so over this bitch. So I'm ringing her out and she bought a decent amount of stuff or whatever. And she's like, She's like, can you hurry up with that? Like, I just want to get out of here. And I go to give her, so this, like I said, this is what, it doesn't make me look good that I did this. So I'm holding the bag and I hold it out to her and she goes to grab it and I drop it in front of her on purpose. And I was like, Merry fucking Christmas, bitch. And and her face, she was like, what did you say? And she was like, I want to talk to the manager. And I literally did a 180 and, or no, not a 180. I was gonna say a 360 at this point. I literally spun around and I was like, ta-da. I was like, it's me. She did not like that. I'm shocked she didn't report. I don't think she reported me to corporate. That was not word of advice. That's not the way to handle someone who's so rude or whatever. I can't remember everything she was saying, but I just know she was pissing me off so much and just so like, oh, no. I feel like she was being derogatory too. And I think that's what was setting me off. And we were just so busy and stressful and other employees like needed my help. And I'm like, I just want to get this bitch off my register and stuff. So I guess that would be one of the more interesting ones. I'm not normally rude like that, but at the same time, you know, she was dishing it and I was dishing it back, I guess. But I think that's all the time we have for today's episode. If you like this kind of stuff, let me know. Maybe we can do the Reddit Old Navy stuff. Those stories, those would probably be pretty interesting to read through. Or employees can send their own stories to me, their own personal stories. I think that would be fun to read maybe. But I want to thank you guys so much for listening and for watching. I want to thank my executive producers, Monica Leigh, and my producers, Rebecca R. and Alexa H. And all of you worked at Old Navy. Haha. Um, if you'd like to buy some merch, go ahead, make people jealous. Go buy some merch in the description or in the show notes. And, you know, if you want to become a producer or give a donation to the show, which both really help a lot, you can go to the Buy Me a Coffee link. That's also in the show notes or the description of the YouTube video. I hope you guys have a super special, awesome day, and bye.